Before we dive into today's terrifying tale, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a spine-chilling story. Let's get into it. The Cursed Candy.
It was Halloween night, and the streets of my neighborhood buzzed with excitement. Dressed as a vampire, I joined my friends, our pillowcases quickly filling with candy as we dashed from house to house, calling out "trick or treat," and laughing at the ridiculous costumes we spotted. The air was crisp, and the scent of autumn leaves mixed with the sweet aroma of chocolate and caramel that wafted from our bags. This was what I had been waiting for all month. As the night wore on, we decided to take one last loop around the neighborhood before heading home. We knocked on doors, reveling in the fun and candy-filled chaos. When I reached one house at the end of the street, I was surprised to find an elderly woman handing out candy. She had a peculiar air about her, as if she were more part of the shadows than the festivities. I approached her, and she smiled, revealing crooked teeth that seemed to glint in the dim porch light. She dropped a chocolate bar into my bag and whispered something that sent a shiver down my spine. "Be careful with that one, dear. It's not what it seems." I chuckled nervously, brushing off her strange warning. How could a piece of candy be anything but sweet? I thanked her and ran back to my friends, eager to show off my latest prize. The others laughed and teased me for taking candy from the creepy old lady, but I didn't care. Once we reached my house, I dumped out my haul on the living room floor. My eyes widened with excitement as I sorted through the candy, but then I spotted it, the chocolate bar from the old woman. The wrapper was unlike anything I had seen before, dark and worn, with faded letters that read, "Do not eat." A thrill of curiosity coursed through me. What was this strange bar doing in my bag? I shrugged off the warning, thinking it was probably some kind of joke. My friends were too busy munching on their treats to notice, so I decided to give in to temptation. Ignoring the strange message, I ripped open the wrapper, the rich scent of chocolate filling the air as I took a big bite. At first, it was delicious, the chocolate melting in my mouth, but as I swallowed, an unsettling feeling settled in my stomach. It felt as if I had crossed a line, but I brushed it off. "It's just candy," I told myself, a mix of guilt and excitement swirling within me. Little did I know, I had just invited something dark into my life. As I crawled into bed that night, the sweet taste of the chocolate still lingered on my tongue. I was exhausted from the night's excitement, but something felt off. The air in my room was thick, almost suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I pulled the covers tightly around me, hoping to shield myself from whatever was creeping at the edges of my mind. Just as I was about to drift off, a chilling whisper broke the silence. "Help me!" The voice was faint, yet it echoed in my ears, sending a wave of dread crashing over me. I shot up in bed, my heart racing as I scanned the dark corners of my room. Shadows danced ominously along the walls, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Is this some kind of joke?" I muttered to myself, trying to dispel the fear that threatened to consume me. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to go back to sleep, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more insistent. "Help me, please." The words cut through the darkness, igniting a fear I couldn't explain. I had never experienced anything like this before. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. That night, I tossed and turned, plagued by restless dreams. In my nightmares, I wandered through eerie landscapes, my feet trudging through fog-laden streets illuminated only by the flickering glow of distant streetlights. Each time I thought I could escape, the shadows closed in around me, and the voice echoed, a haunting melody pulling me deeper into darkness. Help me! I woke up in a cold sweat, gasping for breath, the remnants of the nightmare still fresh in my mind. I glanced at the clock. It was just past 3 in the morning. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my heart pounding as I tried to shake off the remnants of fear. With shaking hands, I reached for the lamp on my bedside table, casting a warm light that chased away the shadows. But even as the light flooded the room, I could still feel the presence lingering just beyond the edges of my vision. I stood up, my feet sinking into the cold floor, and walked over to the window, hoping that the familiar sight of my quiet neighborhood would ground me. As I looked outside, the street was shrouded in darkness. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. But just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye across the street. I squinted into the night, and for a brief moment, I could have sworn I saw a shadow dart past the old house where I had found the cursed chocolate bar. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself. "It's just Halloween. It's all in your head." But as I turned back to my room, I knew deep down that the night wasn't over yet. The whispers and shadows were only just beginning, and I had no idea how to escape the nightmare I had unwittingly invited into my life. The following days dragged on, each one feeling heavier than the last. No matter how hard I tried to shake it off, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being haunted. The nightmares continued, each more vivid and terrifying than the last. I felt like I was being pulled deeper into a dark abyss, and it was becoming harder to differentiate between reality and the twisted visions that plagued my sleep. School felt unbearable. My friends joked about Halloween, sharing stories about their costumes and candy hauls, but I couldn't join in. Every time someone mentioned sweets, a wave of nausea washed over me. I kept that chocolate bar hidden in the back of my closet, a chilling reminder of what I had done. I thought about tossing it, but something held me back, a morbid curiosity mixed with fear. One afternoon, unable to concentrate, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. I wandered through the neighborhood, hoping the fresh air would help me shake the feeling of dread that clung to me like a shadow. As I walked, I passed the old house where I had met the strange woman. My feet seemed to move on their own, guiding me toward the decaying structure. The air grew heavy as I approached, a thick silence enveloping the area. I hesitated at the gate, my heart pounding in my chest. Something inside urged me to turn back, but the whispers returned, a soft plea echoing in my mind. "Help me!" I stepped through the gate, feeling an unnatural chill in the air. The door creaked open slightly as I approached, and I felt an odd sense of familiarity wash over me. It was as if the house recognized me. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, stepping inside. The interior was dimly lit, dust motes swirling in the narrow beams of light that streamed through the cracked windows. Every creak of the floorboards beneath my feet felt like a heartbeat, quickening as I moved deeper into the house. I felt a pull, an urgency that guided me through the shadowy rooms. Then I heard it again, that soft, desperate whisper. "Help me!" It was coming from upstairs. I stood frozen for a moment, fear gripping me, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what was happening. With shaky legs, I climbed the stairs, each step echoing through the stillness of the house. When I reached the top, I noticed a door at the end of the hall, slightly ajar. The whisper grew louder, and I felt drawn toward it. I pushed the door open, and the sight before me took my breath away. There, standing in the middle of the room, was a girl. She was dressed in clothes from another era, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. The moment our gazes locked, a shiver ran down my spine. I felt an overwhelming sadness wash over me, as if I could feel the weight of her pain. "Why did you eat it?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a step back, my heart racing. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer. "I'm the one you saw in your dreams," she said, her eyes pleading. "I was cursed when I ate that chocolate. It was meant for me, but I didn't listen." And now, her voice trailed off, a look of despair crossing her face. "Now it's your turn," she finished, her words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Panic surged through me. "No, I didn't mean to. I thought it was just candy," I pleaded, desperation clawing at my throat. "You must help me," she said, stepping closer. "Find the one who cursed me. Only then can we both be free." My heart raced as I realized the gravity of what she was saying. I was caught in something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The weight of the curse had now fallen onto me, and I had to find a way to break it, for both of us. I stumbled back, my mind racing as the girl's words echoed in my head. Find the one who cursed me. But how could I possibly do that? I had no idea who had created this nightmare or what kind of power they possessed. All I knew was that I was now entangled in a web of horror that had begun with a single chocolate bar. "Please, you have to help me," she urged, her voice trembling with desperation. "You can't let this continue." Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself. "How do I find the person responsible?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The girl hesitated, her gaze drifting to the floor. "I don't know, but I remember the woman. She's the one who gave me the chocolate. She lived nearby, in a rundown house at the edge of town. You must go there and confront her." A knot formed in my stomach. The thought of facing that strange woman again terrified me, but I couldn't ignore the girl's plea. I had to try, not just for myself, but for her as well. With a heavy heart, I left the old house, the girl's figure fading from view as I stepped back into the hall. The air outside felt lighter, but the weight of what I had to do settled heavily on my shoulders. I rushed home, my mind racing with thoughts of how to confront the woman who had set this all in motion. When I arrived home, I didn't waste any time. I gathered my courage, grabbed my jacket, and headed out again, the chill of the night creeping in around me. The old woman's house loomed in my mind, a dark reminder of the curse that had turned my life upside down. After what felt like an eternity, I arrived at the edge of town. The house was even more dilapidated than I remembered, with broken windows and weeds overtaking the yard. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't turn back now. I had to confront my fear. I stepped onto the porch, the wood creaking beneath my weight, and knocked on the door. My knuckles felt raw against the splintered wood, and I was about to turn and flee when the door creaked open. The old woman stood there, her crooked smile returning. "You're back," she said, her voice smooth as honey. "I was wondering when you'd come. What did you do to me?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "What was in that chocolate?" She leaned against the doorframe, her eyes sparkling with something I couldn't quite place. Mischief, perhaps. "Ah, the chocolate. It was a gift, you see. A taste of the darkness that lies within us all." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean? You cursed me," I shouted, anger bubbling to the surface. "Cursed? No, dear. You chose to eat it. I merely revealed what was already there. The darkness in you has awakened, and now you must face it. My head spun as I tried to comprehend her words. "What do I have to do to break this?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "The only way to free yourself is to find the light within the darkness," she replied cryptically. "You must face the spirit you've awakened. Only then will you find peace." As she spoke, I felt an icy grip around my heart. The realization hit me hard. I had to return to the girl. The visions, the nightmares, they all led back to her. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice shaking. "The girl from the house." The old woman's smile widened, revealing more of her crooked teeth. "She's where you left her, dear. But remember, the path ahead will be filled with trials. You must be brave." I stepped back, the weight of her words settling heavily on my shoulders. I had to face whatever awaited me. With newfound determination, I turned and raced back to the old house, knowing that the true test was yet to come. I arrived back at the old house, my heart racing and palms clammy with fear. The air felt heavier, thick with anticipation as I climbed the creaky stairs that led to the room where I had last seen the girl. I had to confront the spirit I had awakened, and I could only hope that I was strong enough to face what lay ahead. As I pushed the door open, the room was dimly lit, shadows dancing along the walls. I called out, "Are you here?" My voice echoed in the stillness, and for a moment I was met with silence. Panic began to bubble within me, but then I heard it, the soft whisper, "Help me!" I turned to the center of the room, and there she stood, the girl with the haunting eyes. But now, something was different. A flicker of darkness clouded her gaze. "You returned," she said, her voice tinged with an unsettling mix of relief and sorrow. "I came back to help you," I said, forcing myself to remain steady. "But the old woman, she said I have to face the darkness. What does that mean?" The girl's expression shifted. "It's the darkness that consumes me, and now you too. The chocolate awakened it, and it feeds on fear and despair. You must confront it if you want to break the curse." I swallowed hard, dread pooling in my stomach. "But how? I don't even know what it is." The girl stepped closer, her ethereal form shimmering in the low light. "You must look within yourself. The darkness is not just mine. It's a part of you now. You have to face your own fears, your own guilt. Only then can we both be free." I closed my eyes, recalling all the things I had buried deep inside. My insecurities, my regrets, the times I felt utterly alone. The weight of them pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, the room darkened, and shadows surged around us, twisting and writhing like living creatures. I felt a chill grip my heart as the whispers grew louder, filling the air with chaos. "You're weak," they taunted. "You can't escape." "No," I shouted, clenching my fists. "You're wrong. I won't let you take me." As I opened my eyes, I saw the girl standing beside me, her expression fierce and resolute. "You have to believe. Fight back." With every ounce of strength I could muster, I focused on the light within me, the moments of joy, love, and hope I had experienced. I summoned the memories of laughter shared with friends, the warmth of family, and the light that flickered in the darkest moments of my life. The shadows recoiled, their grip loosening as I embraced the light. "I am not afraid," I yelled, my voice echoing through the room. "You have no power over me." With each declaration, the darkness shrank away, and the whispers turned into anguished cries, fading into the void. I felt the weight lift off my chest, and for the first time, I could breathe freely. In that moment, the girl smiled, a look of pure relief. "You did it," she exclaimed. "You faced your darkness." As the last of the shadows dissolved, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The room brightened, and I turned to the girl, who was beginning to fade. "What will happen to you?" I asked, a lump forming in my throat. "I'll be free now," she said softly. "Thank you for facing it with me. You broke the curse, not just for yourself, but for both of us." Before I could say another word, she vanished completely, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air. I stood alone in the now bright room, my heart swelling with a mix of sadness and relief. I walked out of the house, feeling lighter than I had in days. The weight of the curse had lifted, and though the memory of the darkness would linger, I knew I had the strength to face whatever life threw at me next. As I stepped into the cool night air, I looked up at the stars shining brightly above. It was a new beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Halloween had brought darkness, but it had also shown me the light within myself, and that was a gift I would carry with me forever.
The bell.
It was Halloween night, and the air was filled with the sound of laughter and excitement. I had always enjoyed the holiday. Something about the costumes, the spooky decorations, and the playful fear in the air made it feel special. Even though I lived alone, I still made an effort every year to decorate my house with pumpkins, cobwebs, and eerie lights to match the festive spirit. By 8 p.m., my front porch had seen a steady stream of children in colorful costumes, shouting trick or treat with glee. I handed out candy with a smile, admiring their creativity. A little witch here, a superhero there, all under the glow of jack-o'-lanterns. It was fun, harmless, and it made the quiet of living alone a little more bearable for a night. As the night grew later, the knocks on my door became less frequent. I figured the trick-or-treating was winding down. I poured myself a glass of wine, flipped on the TV, and settled in for the rest of the evening. Halloween might have been over for the kids, but for me, it was the perfect excuse to relax and enjoy the eerie ambience. Then, just as I was about to head to bed, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. It was after 10 p.m., much too late for any more trick-or-treaters. I hesitated, thinking maybe it was a group of teenagers pulling a prank. The kids had cleared out by now, and the streets outside were dead silent. Still, I grabbed the candy bowl and made my way to the door. When I opened it, the porch was empty. A gust of cold air blew in, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I stepped out onto the porch and scanned the street. No one was out there. Not a sound, not a movement. The wind rustled the leaves, and the streetlights flickered dimly in the distance. Weird, I thought. Maybe I didn't hear it properly. I closed the door, slightly unsettled but trying not to make a big deal out of it. It was probably just some kids messing around, trying to get one last laugh before the night ended. I returned to the couch, took a sip of my wine, and tried to shake off the uneasiness. But a few minutes later, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was louder, more urgent. My heart skipped a beat. Who would be ringing the bell this late, and why? I set the glass down and walked back to the door, feeling a slight annoyance creeping in. I pulled the door open, expecting to catch someone this time. But again, nothing. No kids. No teenagers. Just the quiet street in front of me, bathed in the pale glow of the moon. I stepped out further onto the porch, trying to catch sight of anyone hiding nearby. But there was no one. No footsteps retreating, no shadows moving. Just an empty street and the eerie silence that seemed to stretch for miles. Feeling a little foolish, I muttered to myself, Must be a prank. I turned back inside, but as I was about to close the door, I hesitated. Something about this didn't feel right. My house wasn't exactly in a busy neighborhood, and I hadn't seen anyone around in the last hour. So why would someone still be out here? I decided to check the security camera I had installed by the front door. It was more for peace of mind than anything else, but at that moment, I was glad I had it. I pulled up the feed on my phone, rewinding to the moments when the bell rang. If it was a prankster, I'd at least get a glimpse of them on the footage. But when I played the recording, there was nothing. No kids, no people, nothing at all. The bell had rung, but no one had been at my door. I sat there, staring at the screen of my phone, trying to process what I was seeing, or rather, what I wasn't seeing. The doorbell had rung, clear as day, but there was no one in the footage. No kids running away. No pranksters hiding in the bushes. Nothing. Just the faint sway of the trees in the wind and my empty porch. A chill ran down my spine, and I laughed nervously to myself. Maybe the camera missed something, I muttered, though I knew it wasn't likely. Still, I tried to shake off the unease creeping up inside me. Halloween, right? People play tricks. My mind's probably just playing along. I put my phone down and tried to distract myself with the TV, flipping through channels without really watching anything. But the silence around me felt heavy, oppressive even. The wind outside had picked up, rattling the windows slightly. I poured myself another glass of wine, hoping it would calm my nerves, but every little sound in the house made me jump. Then the doorbell rang again. This time, the sound cut through me like a knife. It was louder, more insistent, as if whoever was on the other side was determined to get my attention. My heart started pounding, and my hands felt clammy. I sat frozen for a moment, staring at the door. It was just a prank, I told myself. Kids being kids. But there was something about the way that bell rang, something almost desperate. I forced myself to stand up, grabbing my phone as I walked toward the door. I wasn't about to open it again without checking the camera first. My fingers fumbled a bit as I pulled up the live feed, my pulse racing. The screen loaded, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. The porch was empty. Again. I stared at the screen, expecting, hoping even, to see someone darting away, some shadow or movement that would explain this, but there was nothing. Just the stillness of my front yard and the dim light from the street lamp. This didn't make sense. I moved closer to the door, phone in hand, debating whether to open it again. My rational brain told me there was no one there, but the instinctual part of me, the one that felt the growing sense of dread, didn't want to believe it. Something was off. Very off. The bell rang once more, and I jumped, nearly dropping my phone. Without thinking, I yanked open the door, half expecting to catch someone in the act this time. But when I looked out, my front porch was just as empty as the camera had shown. The street was deserted, and the air was still, except for the faint rustling of leaves. I stepped outside, scanning the yard, my breath visible in the cool night air. "Hello," I called out, hoping for an answer, any kind of response. Silence. I stood there for a moment, the cold biting at my skin, waiting for something, anything, to break the stillness. But there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of distant traffic and the occasional creak of my house settling behind me. Slowly, I retreated back inside, shutting the door with a heavy thud. My heart was racing now, and I could feel a tightness in my chest. This wasn't a prank. It couldn't be. But if it wasn't kids messing around, what was it? I locked the door, double-checking the deadbolt. I don't know why, but I felt a sudden urgency to make sure everything was secure. Maybe it was the paranoia creeping in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I walked back to the couch, clutching my phone tightly in one hand, and sat down, my eyes flicking back to the door every few seconds. The wine wasn't helping anymore. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the wind rattling the windows. I was on edge, hyper-aware of every little thing around me. I checked the security camera feed again, rewinding and replaying the moments just before the bell rang. Still nothing. No figures, no shadows, no pranksters. Just the empty porch staring back at me. For the first time that night, I began to feel truly unsettled. This wasn't normal. Halloween pranks didn't go this far. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just someone messing with me. Something wasn't right. And then, without warning, the doorbell rang again. But this time, it didn't stop. It just kept ringing, over and over and over, as if someone was leaning on the button, refusing to let go. I stared at the door, my heart thudding in my chest, and for the first time in a long time, I felt real fear. Something, or someone, was out there, and they weren't going away. The doorbell rang incessantly, each chime echoing through the house like a pulse. It was relentless, shrill, and filled the air with a nerve-wracking intensity. My skin prickled, and I felt a cold sweat forming on the back of my neck. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the door as the ringing seemed to burrow into my brain. "Stop it!" I shouted, my voice cracking with fear and frustration. But the ringing didn't stop. Whoever was out there, if anyone was out there, wasn't giving up. They wanted my attention, and they wanted it now. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to pull up the security camera feed once more. I needed to see. I needed proof that there was someone, causing this. But when I looked at the screen, my stomach dropped. The porch was still empty. No figure leaning on the doorbell, no shadowy prankster in the corner of the camera's view. Just the same eerie, empty porch that I'd seen the last 2 times. The doorbell was ringing, loud and clear, but no one was there to push it. I felt a tightness in my chest, a growing sense of dread that I couldn't shake. This wasn't just a prank anymore. Something far more sinister was happening, and it was targeting me. My rational mind struggled to keep up, searching for an explanation, but nothing made sense. It was like my house had been invaded by something invisible, something that wasn't bound by the rules of the world I knew. The ringing continued, now even more frantic, as if the person or thing on the other side was desperate to be let in. I covered my ears, trying to block out the sound, but it was no use. It was everywhere, reverberating through the walls, through my head. The noise was maddening. I couldn't take it anymore. I shot up from the couch, my heart racing, and marched toward the door, my hands trembling. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I couldn't just sit there. I had to confront it. I had to see for myself what was causing this, even if every instinct in my body screamed for me to stay away. With one swift motion, I unlocked the door and yanked it open, the ringing cutting off instantly as I did. Silence flooded the house, deafening in its suddenness. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped onto the porch, looking around wildly for any sign of movement, any sign of life. But once again, the street was empty. The night was still. The only sound was the faint rustling of the wind in the trees and the distant hum of traffic. No trick-or-treaters. No figures in the shadows. Nothing. I took a step back, my body shaking with a mixture of fear and confusion. I didn't understand. How could the doorbell be ringing with no one there? My eyes darted to the doorbell itself, and for the first time, I noticed something strange. It was wet. The button was slick with some kind of dark, sticky substance. I bent down, my heart pounding as I inspected it closer. At first, I thought it was water from the rain earlier, but the liquid was too thick, too dark. It looked almost like blood. My breath hitched in my throat. I reached out with a trembling hand and touched the substance. It was warm, almost fresh. I recoiled instantly, wiping my hand on my jeans, my heart racing faster now. Blood. How could there be blood on my doorbell? A cold wave of dread washed over me, and I stumbled backward into the house, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked it, my hands shaking violently, and backed away from the door, my eyes wide with terror. This wasn't normal. This wasn't some Halloween prank gone too far. Something was terribly wrong, and it was happening to me. I paced the room, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. I grabbed my phone, desperately considering calling the police. But what would I say? Someone's ringing my doorbell, but no one's there, and now there's blood on it. I could already hear them dismissing me as some paranoid lunatic. I needed proof. Something concrete. I couldn't just tell them the doorbell was ringing on its own. Maybe the camera hadn't picked something up before. Maybe I was missing something. I had to check it again. I pulled up the security feed one more time, rewinding to just before the doorbell started ringing for the last time. My eyes scanned the screen, every muscle in my body tense, waiting for something, anything, to appear. But as the footage played, my heart stopped. At the exact moment the doorbell rang, the camera glitched, just for a second. The screen flickered with static, and in that brief moment, I saw it. A figure. Tall, shadowy, standing right in front of the door. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. The footage returned to normal, showing nothing but the empty porch once more. But I had seen it. I knew I had. Something had been there, even if only for a split second. Something that wasn't human. Something that was still out there. I dropped the phone, my whole body shaking uncontrollably now. I didn't know what it was, but it had been watching me. It had been right outside my door, and I had opened it. I had almost let it in. And then the doorbell rang again. The doorbell rang again, shattering the tense silence that had enveloped me. The sound pierced through the air like a knife, and I staggered back, my heart pounding in my chest. This time, it was a slow, deliberate chime, almost as if the thing on the other side was taunting me. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything to escape the terror that had seeped into my bones. But I was frozen in place, staring at the door as if it might somehow reveal the horror lurking just outside. I could feel my pulse in my ears, drowning out all rational thought. The shadow on the security footage had confirmed my worst fears. I wasn't alone. Something had come for me. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. I had to think. I had to figure out what to do next. But the room felt like it was closing in around me. I glanced around, looking for anything that might help, a weapon, a way out, anything. But my mind was too clouded with panic. Then, another ring. This one came even faster, as if whatever was outside was growing impatient. I could almost feel the vibrations through the floorboards. It was a twisted game, and I was caught in the middle. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the security footage, desperately searching for a sign, a clue. I rewound the video, examining every second, but the glitch had been there and gone, leaving me with nothing but static and darkness. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I couldn't let fear consume me. I needed a plan. I remembered I had a baseball bat in the closet, something to defend myself with, just in case. If it came down to it, I had to be prepared. I crept toward the closet, trying to remain as quiet as possible. My heart raced with every step, and I felt like I was walking on eggshells, afraid that the slightest sound would alert whatever was outside. As I reached for the handle, the doorbell rang again, this time accompanied by a soft, almost whispering voice. "Let me in." I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The voice was low, barely above a whisper, but it chilled me to the bone. It sounded almost familiar. I couldn't tell if it was a child's voice or something else entirely. Either way, it sent shivers down my spine. "Let me in," it repeated, a little louder this time, as if it were drawing closer. I could feel a cold breeze seeping through the cracks around the door, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. I stumbled back, trying to suppress a scream. "No!" I shouted, my voice hoarse and trembling. "Go away! You're not welcome here!" The voice fell silent for a moment, and for a fleeting instant, I thought it might have worked. But then the doorbell rang again, the sound almost mocking me, like laughter echoing through the night. "Let me in," it said again, and my heart dropped. It was as if it was no longer asking. It was demanding. I forced myself to turn away from the door and rushed to the closet, flinging it open. My hands scrambled through the coats and shoes, finally grasping the cold metal of the baseball bat. I gripped it tightly, my knuckles white, and took a deep breath. I had to confront this. I couldn't let it take me. With the bat in hand, I faced the door once more, my heart racing in my chest. I knew I couldn't just hide away. I had to know what was on the other side. I took a step forward, the wooden floor creaking beneath me. The voice came again, softer, almost pleading. "Please, let me in. I just want to play." The words sent a wave of nausea through me. This wasn't a game. This was a nightmare. I felt the urge to call the police again, but what could I say? I couldn't explain what was happening. I was trapped in a waking nightmare, and all I could do was face it. I stood my ground, bat raised, and called out, "If you're out there, show yourself. I'm not afraid of you." Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. My breath caught in my throat as I listened intently, waiting for a response. The doorbell remained silent, but I could feel a presence lingering just beyond the threshold, something dark and malevolent. Then I heard it, a soft scraping sound against the wood of my door, followed by a whisper that seemed to seep through the cracks. "Open the door. I just want to see you." My skin crawled as the voice wrapped around me, coiling like a snake. I took a shaky step back, every instinct telling me to flee, but I couldn't. I wouldn't let it win. Not like this. Gathering every ounce of courage, I shouted, "Get away from my door. Leave me alone." In response, the doorbell rang one last time, the sound resonating deep within my chest. It was louder, more aggressive, as if the thing outside was growing impatient with my defiance. "Let me in," it demanded, the voice shifting, becoming more distorted and menacing. The fear surged through me like wildfire, and without thinking, I bolted toward the back of the house. I couldn't stay here. I had to get away from that door. I ran through the darkened rooms, my heart racing as I searched for a place to hide, a way to escape the terror that was relentlessly pursuing me. I had to find a way out. I couldn't let whatever was out there get in. I sprinted through my house, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. The shadows loomed over me, dark and oppressive, but I couldn't stop to think about them. I needed to find a way out, a place to hide. My mind raced as I darted through the kitchen, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see something looming behind me. I reached the back door, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the lock. I heard the doorbell ring again, this time accompanied by a low, sinister laugh that sent chills down my spine. It echoed through the air, filling the house with an ominous presence. "You can't escape," it taunted, the voice dripping with malice. I finally managed to unlock the door and yanked it open, stumbling outside into the cool night air. The yard was shrouded in darkness, the moonlight casting eerie shadows on the ground. I looked back at my house, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I couldn't let it win. I had to fight. I glanced around, searching for a place to hide, a way to escape. The street was empty, the houses around me silent, as if they were holding their breath. I felt so utterly alone, but deep down, I knew I couldn't run. I had to confront whatever was tormenting me. I took a deep breath and turned back to my house, the door swinging shut behind me. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I tightened my grip on the baseball bat, steeling myself for what was to come. I had to face it, whatever it was. As I stepped back inside, I felt a heavy weight settle over me. The air felt thick and charged, like a storm brewing on the horizon. I slowly made my way toward the living room, where the doorbell had first begun its incessant ringing. The moment I entered, the doorbell rang again, louder this time. I could feel it resonating in my bones, vibrating through the walls of my house. "Let me in," the voice called out, now more urgent and demanding. "I just want to play." I took a deep breath and yelled, "No, you're not welcome here. You need to leave me alone." The laughter returned, cold and mocking. "You don't understand. This is your only chance." I felt my stomach twist as I realized it wasn't just trying to scare me. It was trying to manipulate me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't show weakness. I was done playing this twisted game. I raised the bat, my knuckles white as I shouted back, "I'm not afraid of you. Whatever you are, I won't let you in." The lights flickered overhead, and the shadows in the room seemed to grow, creeping closer to me. I stood my ground, heart racing, determined to face whatever was tormenting me. "Do you really think you can keep me out?" The voice hissed, dripping with venom. "I'm already inside your head. You can't escape." The room grew colder, and I could see my breath in front of me. Panic surged through me, but I clung to my resolve. I took a step toward the door, every fiber of my being urging me to turn back, to flee. But I couldn't. I wouldn't let it win. With all my strength, I swung the bat against the door, a loud thud echoing through the space. "Get out!" I screamed, my voice breaking. "You don't belong here." The laughter echoed once more, and in that moment, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt charged with energy, swirling around me like a storm. The lights flickered again, and then, suddenly, everything went dark. I was plunged into darkness, and for a moment, I felt utterly alone. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for my phone, desperate to find some light. But before I could turn it on, a cold hand grasped my wrist, freezing me in place. I gasped. a surge of terror flooding my veins as I felt the presence draw closer. "You should have let me in," it whispered, its breath chilling against my skin. "Now you'll pay the price." In that moment, something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to be a victim. I twisted my wrist free and swung the bat wildly, feeling it connect with something solid. A pained shriek filled the air, echoing in the darkness, and I stumbled back, my heart racing. "Leave me alone!" I shouted into the void, my voice raw and trembling. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room, but the figure that had been lurking was gone. I stood there, breathing heavily, scanning every corner of the room for any sign of movement. Had I imagined it? Was it really gone? But as I glanced down, I noticed a dark stain on the floor, the same dark, sticky substance that had been on the doorbell. My heart sank as I realized it wasn't over yet. Whatever had been haunting me was still there, lurking in the shadows. I turned and ran, bursting out of the living room and into the hallway. I could feel its presence, an oppressive weight pressing down on me as I dashed for the back door again. I flung it open and bolted outside, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I didn't stop to think. I ran down the street, my heart racing, the fear pushing me forward. I could feel the darkness behind me, closing in, but I refused to look back. I had to get away. As I ran, I could still hear that haunting voice echoing in my head. "You can't escape me. I'll always be with you." But I wouldn't let it. I would find a way to break free from this nightmare. I would fight back, no matter what it took. And in that moment, as I ran through the darkness, I vowed I would not be a victim any longer. This time, I would take control. This time, I would be the one to decide when the game was over.
The Forgotten Mask.
It was Halloween night, and my house was alive with excitement. I had spent weeks preparing for this costume party, wanting everything to be perfect for my friends. The air was filled with the sweet smell of caramel apples and pumpkin spice, and I had decorated every corner with cobwebs and jack-o'-lanterns. I could hardly contain my anticipation as I set up the playlist and arranged the snacks. As I was finishing up in the living room, I noticed a small, dusty box tucked away in a corner, almost hidden beneath a pile of old decorations. Curiosity bubbled up inside me, and I pulled it out, brushing off the dust. When I opened the box, my heart skipped a beat. Inside lay a clown mask, its grin wide and sinister, the paint chipped and faded. "Where did this come from?" I murmured, glancing around the room. I didn't remember buying it, nor did I recall anyone bringing it to the party. A chill ran down my spine, but I pushed the unease aside. After all, it was Halloween, a night for fright and fun. I decided it would make the perfect addition to my costume. I slipped the mask on, feeling the cool material against my skin. Instantly, I transformed into a twisted version of a clown, and I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous I looked. I thought my friends would find it hilarious. Just as I was about to head back to the party, the doorbell rang. I hurried to the door, excitement bubbling within me. But as I opened it, a shiver coursed through me. The air felt heavy, thick with an unexplainable tension. I shook my head, brushing it off as nerves, and welcomed my friends inside, forcing a smile as I greeted them. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a night that would change everything. As the party got into full swing, laughter and music filled my home, creating an atmosphere of carefree celebration. I lost myself in the joy of the night, mingling with my friends and enjoying the festive decorations I had put up. But every so often, My gaze drifted to the clown mask resting on the table. It seemed to call to me, a strange pull that I couldn't quite explain. After a few drinks, I decided to wear the mask again, thinking it would add to the fun. I slipped it on, and in that moment, something shifted. The vibrant colors of the decorations around me became even more pronounced, and the laughter of my friends echoed in a way that felt distorted, almost surreal. I shook my head, dismissing it as a trick of the alcohol. But then the first odd occurrence happened. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the walls. A few guests laughed it off, but I felt a chill creep down my spine. I could have sworn I saw something dart in my peripheral vision, but whenever I turned, there was nothing there. Just the flickering lights and the warm glow of the party. Just Halloween vibes, right? I joked, trying to lighten the mood, but my friends exchanged worried glances. I could feel their concern weighing heavily in the air, but I pushed it aside. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I was overreacting. Wanting to shake off the growing unease, I decided to step outside for some fresh air. The cool night enveloped me, a stark contrast to the warmth of the party inside. I leaned against the porch railing, taking deep breaths, trying to clear my head. But then I noticed something out of the ordinary, a shadow lurking near the edge of my yard. It moved slightly, almost as if it were watching me. I squinted into the darkness, but as soon as I turned my head, it vanished. I felt my heart race, unease creeping back in. Am I really seeing this? I whispered to myself, trying to convince my mind that it was just a trick of the light. After a few minutes, I returned to the party, hoping that the night would return to normal. But when I stepped inside, an unsettling feeling washed over me. The laughter seemed more forced now, and my friends were huddled together, whispering in hushed tones. I couldn't shake the sensation that the mask was somehow involved in the strange occurrences. I decided it was time to take the mask off, longing for a sense of normalcy again. But as I reached for it, I felt a strange resistance, as if the mask were glued to the table. Panic surged through me, and I glanced around, realizing that everyone was staring at me with expressions of concern mixed with fear. What was happening? The atmosphere in the room felt thick, almost suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. My friends continued to look at me with a mix of worry and disbelief. "Are you okay?" one of them asked, stepping closer. I tried to respond, but my throat felt tight. It was as if I were being pulled into a deep abyss, and all I could focus on was the mask that refused to leave my face. I stepped back, stumbling over a chair, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. The laughter and music faded into a distant echo, replaced by a low, haunting whisper that seemed to seep from the mask itself. "Embrace me," it urged, the voice chilling me to the bone. I shook my head, desperately trying to fight the dark thoughts that flooded my mind. I was losing control. The lights flickered again, and this time they went out completely, plunging us into darkness. Gasps filled the air, followed by frantic whispers. I could hear footsteps scuffling across the floor, a sense of panic rising among my friends. I felt disoriented, like I was trapped in a nightmare where I couldn't escape. I could only hear the muffled sounds of my friends trying to reassure each other. Then, as suddenly as they had gone out, the lights flickered back on, revealing the horror that awaited me. My reflection caught in the mirror startled me. Staring back was not just me. My eyes were sunken and black, void of any life, as if the mask had devoured my very soul. I stepped closer to the mirror, horrified by the twisted figure I had become. "Get it off! Get it off!" I screamed, panic rising in my throat. My friends, wide-eyed with terror, began to back away from me. "What happened to you?" one of them shouted, their voice tinged with fear. I wanted to scream that I didn't know, that I was still in here somewhere, but the mask's grip tightened, drowning out my pleas. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, drowning out everything else. "You belong to me now," they taunted, filling my head with malevolent thoughts. I felt the urge to give in, to let the darkness wash over me, to embrace whatever power this mask promised. It was intoxicating, but deep down, I knew I had to resist. Desperation clawed at me. "I won't let you take me," I roared, but the voice only laughed, echoing in my mind. I needed to fight back. I needed to find the strength to break free from this nightmare. But how? As I stood there, my heart racing and the mask tightening around my face, I felt a surge of adrenaline. My friends were backing away, their faces painted with fear and concern. "What is happening to you?" someone shouted, but I couldn't respond. The darkness inside the mask was pulling at me, whispering promises of power and chaos, but deep down, I fought to cling to my true self. I staggered backward, desperate to regain control. My hands clawed at the mask, but it felt as though it was fused to my skin. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Embrace the darkness," they chanted, and I felt my will slipping away, piece by piece. Then, I remembered my love for Halloween, the joy of sharing the night with friends. I thought about the laughter we had shared earlier, the thrill of the spooky decorations, and the innocence of childhood trick-or-treating. That memory ignited a spark of resistance deep within me. I could still fight back. With a sudden surge of determination, I screamed, "You will not take me!" The words tore from my throat, raw and defiant. I focused on the person I used to be, on the light that had once filled my life. "Get off me!" I shouted again, and I felt a tremor run through the mask, as if my voice had the power to break its hold. The air crackled with energy, and the whispers turned to shrieks of anger. "No, you cannot escape," they cried, but I pushed through the chaos. I grasped the edges of the mask tighter, feeling the cool material start to crack beneath my fingers. "I am not yours," I bellowed, my voice echoing in the room, and with one final desperate pull, I yanked the mask away from my face. The moment it came off, a rush of energy surged through me. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, my heart pounding violently in my chest. My friends rushed forward, their faces a mix of relief and concern. "Are you okay?" one of them asked, kneeling beside me. I looked up at them, the mask lying lifeless at my feet, cracked and devoid of its sinister power. "I think so," I managed to whisper, still trembling from the intensity of the experience. But I knew, deep down, that the mask was not just an object. It had been a vessel for something much darker, something that had almost consumed me. I glanced at the mask, a sense of dread settling in my stomach. The atmosphere had shifted, the once lively party now hanging in the air with a palpable tension. I could still hear the faint echoes of the whispers, lingering in the corners of my mind, and I knew this Halloween would haunt me long after the night was over. The chaos in the room slowly subsided as I regained my breath and composure. My friends surrounded me, their faces etched with concern, but I could see the flickers of relief in their eyes. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. They had been there, witnessing the darkness I had almost succumbed to. "Are you really okay?" one of them asked, still kneeling beside me. I nodded, but deep down, I could feel the remnants of fear gnawing at my insides. The mask lay on the floor, an unassuming object now, but I knew its true nature. It wasn't just a party prop. It was something far more sinister, a conduit for a malevolence that had tried to take hold of me. We gathered together in a small circle, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words. I felt the need to share what had happened, to explain the darkness that had enveloped me. "I don't know how to explain it," I began, my voice shaky. "When I put that mask on, it felt like it was alive. Like it wanted to take over." "Take over? What do you mean?" another friend pressed, concern etched in their expression. I took a deep breath, the weight of the experience still heavy on my chest. It whispered to me. It wanted me to embrace it, to give in to something dark, I confessed. I could see the shock on their faces, but I pressed on. It was like I was losing myself, losing control. A tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant sound of laughter from a party down the street. The fun of Halloween had shifted to something far more sinister in my home, and I didn't know how to make sense of it. "We should get rid of the mask," one friend finally said, her voice firm. "It's not safe. It's just a decoration, but it feels wrong." As a group, we carefully picked up the mask, its surface cool and ominous against my palm. The air around it felt charged, like static electricity crackling in the atmosphere. We decided to take it outside, far away from the party, where we could destroy it without it haunting us any longer. Once we reached the backyard, I hesitated. "What if it comes back?" I whispered, the fear creeping back in. My friends rallied around me, creating a protective barrier against whatever darkness had tried to invade our night. With a deep breath, we gathered around the fire pit, flames dancing in the cool night air. As I threw the mask into the flames, I felt a surge of relief, watching the fire consume it, turning the once sinister object into nothing but ash. The whispers faded, replaced by the crackling of the fire and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was over, or so I hoped. We returned inside, the atmosphere lighter, laughter gradually replacing the tension. But as I settled back into the party, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within me. The mask was gone, but the darkness it had brought with it lingered in the corners of my mind. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't help but feel the shadows of that night hovering just out of sight. I found myself avoiding Halloween celebrations, haunted by the memory of what could have happened. My friends remained supportive, always checking in, but a part of me knew that I would never truly escape the night the mask almost took me. Halloween would come around again, and I would have to face it, not just the fear of the mask, but the knowledge that darkness exists, and it waits for moments of weakness to creep in. I learned that some masks are not just for Halloween. They can hide true horrors, and once worn, they are not easily forgotten.